Hi folks, welcome to this episode of The Art of Engineering. Now, for the more ham-centered folk that watch this channel, this is going to be a little bit of a departure from that ham content, but never fear, there will be ham content being uploaded this week. While I was wandering around in Auckland and not playing around with my ham gear, I had the opportunity to visit the Museum of Technology and Transport, MOTAT, in Auckland. And this got me thinking about technology in general. And of course, you'd have to be living under a rock not to have noticed the vast amount of conversations and musing on the newest type of technology that we're encountering. And that, of course, is artificial intelligence. Or as I like to call it, the stupid making machine. As an educator of technology and engineering, it was quite exciting technology when I first encountered it, and I was upbeat about it and very positive about the contributions that it would make, not only to society, but to education as well. I could see exciting possibilities, and I'd like to think there are still exciting possibilities existing within this technology. I'm sure there is, but I've kind of tempered that enthusiasm now with a little bit of trepidation. And in this video, I'm going to try and explain probably the two most common arguments for implementation of this technology in an educational setting, and maybe swaying away from it. And if you're sticking around to find out what the solution is, I don't have that solution, and I don't think anybody does. So we'll just keep it there. But let's start this conversation. Okay. Argument number one for the implementation of this technology, of course, is that it's here now and it's going to be part of society, and children will need to understand it and will need to understand how to use it properly and use it in such a way that it's not going to be detrimental to their development. That's the argument that's most commonly cited when we're talking about why we need to start using it in an educational setting. And I have to say also that as a teacher, I have noticed already a lot of staff are using it to write comments, to write emails, to mark papers, to mark assignments. I myself have availed myself of this technology, and as excited as I was initially with how quickly it could do things, it also started to concern me a little bit about the disconnect between the actual grading, say, of an assignment, understanding where a student's at, and the fact that by using AI, we were tending to disconnect from that process. As hard as that process is, because let's face it, learning is a difficult journey, and teaching and understanding your pupils is also a difficult journey. And it's a journey that needs to happen if you're going to understand your students, where their weaknesses lay, where their strengths lay, in a really connected sense. Now, the argument against this technology was something that I wasn't that aware of until I was provided an opportunity to listen to a talk by a gentleman by the name of Dr. Mark Williams. He was a neurobiologist, and he studied the impacts of technology on student learning. One of the things he told the audience about was the fact that in peer-reviewed papers, there was quite a bit of evidence indicating that laptops in the classroom had actually had quite a detrimental impact. It had obviously some important benefits, the speed of research, all that sort of stuff, but that largely these devices in the classroom were a distraction, to the point where some students were missing out on up to 40% of their learning. They're not certain about all the reasons why this is happening, but one of the conclusions was that the interruptions via notifications and just the continual distraction via the opportunity to go off onto other things that maybe are not assisting the learning were too much of a temptation for most students. That lecture that Mark Williams provided was a real eye-opener. One of the other things that he discussed was the fact that he had actually had quite a lot of dealings with the people who are peddling this product, AI, and he was indicating that a lot of the kingpins, people like Zuckerberg and Bill Gates and Sam Altman, he was indicating that any of those people that had children refused to allow their children to be anywhere near this technology, be it social media or laptops or screens in general. They were all being educated in a very, very traditional sense. That kind of got me thinking that quite often in the past, when people were troubled by change, people would tend to look back into the past for a solution. They would use the wisdom from the past with an adjustment for the current times. As an art teacher, I know I said I was a technology teacher, but originally I studied fine art. The Renaissance is a key example of this type of looking into the past. We look to the grand ancient Greek and Roman art to provide a way forward after the Dark Ages, be it from a scientific point of view, but also from an artistic point of view. Now, as we headed into modernism, the ascendancy of art was being challenged by technology, by photography. We had a lot of artists looking to what's now a very pejorative term, the primitive art, indigenous art, oceanic art, that sort of thing, as a way of moving forward. So we have this key example of looking to the past to inform the present. At the present moment, there is a lot of change happening in education, and I think one of the ways we perhaps need to think about moving forward is to actually look back a little bit before we move forwards and really start questioning the impact of this technology. Because once this technology is introduced, it's going to be very, very hard to remove its influence. Now, please understand, I'm not about to move into a little cabin and start writing a manifesto. But I think we need to understand that this technology could have a deep impact. And so we want to be very, very careful about how we implement it. We already know that social media has had a huge impact socially on children's development, and it's also caused quite a bit of psychological trauma in some children. And we're now trying to create laws that police who gets to actually use this technology, and it's after the fact. It's very, very hard to do this stuff after the fact, which is why I'm advocating for extreme caution. Now, a couple of ideas that have popped into my head while I've been ruminating on this subject is that if your mind is like a garden, allegorically speaking, then flowers are like the thoughts that bloom within that garden. And we all know how difficult gardening can be. It's never easy. I guess AI is like going down to the flower shop and buying yourself a bunch of flowers. One of the things that makes us quintessentially human is consciousness and self-aware consciousness. And the expression of this self-aware consciousness is creative problem solving. It isn't about the destination, it's about the journey. So they're two ideas that really need to be considered very, very heavily when we're engaging with AI from an educational perspective. While I'm here, I would like you to, if you're enjoying this content or you think you might be interested in more content like this, to leave me a comment. You might agree with some of what I'm saying or disagree completely with what I'm saying. And I would really love to hear from you in the comments below. Hit the like or the dislike button. And if you're really interested in seeing more content from this channel, it would be very helpful if you hit that subscribe button. Let's get back to the rest of the video. Now, walking around MOTAT, the Museum of Technology and Transport in Auckland, first section I walked into, of course, was the STEAM section. Fantastically elegant mechanical solutions to problems. And that type of technology obviously was a major impact on people who were craftsmen, and it definitely changed the landscape of employment within society. Had major impacts, both positive and negative. And a lot of the time when new technology is implemented, people will quite often scream and yell about how negative it's going to be and not talk about how positive it's going to be. In general, I have a very, very glass half full attitude when it comes to technological advancement, and it's the same with AI for me. But I will say that people who will say, how is this any different to any other tool that's been created over the centuries? I would say that AI is not a difference in degree of technological advancement. I would say, to coin a very philosophical term, it's ontologically different. It's different in type rather than degree. Why so, you might be asking? Well, I'm going to need to explain that to you. I'm going to try and explain my understanding of why I think it's different, not via degree, but actually of type of technology, and therefore the impacts may be very, very much different to what we'd expect from a normal tool of technology. The Canadian media theorist, Marshall McLuhan, the writer of a book called Understanding Media, and the gentleman who coined the phrase, the global village and the medium is the message, had a number of ideas that have informed my interpretation of AI and why it is different to other tools of technology. Now, McLuhan is famous for a lot of reasons. One of the main reasons was that he predicted the internet way before the internet was an actual thing. Now, how did he predict the internet? He made the rather salient observation that every new form of media technology subsumes the one that comes before it. So, for example, we used to live in societies where all the information was conveyed via stories, vocally, via voice. With the invention of the printing press, that voice is subsumed into text. So that's the new invention that's subsuming voice. And then, of course, along comes radio, where voice and text become the radio transmission. And then, obviously, radio transmission becomes part of television. And Marshall McLuhan said that with the direction of this type of subsuming of the previous medium, that in the future, there would be a medium where the user had a lot more creative control, think social media, YouTube, that sort of thing, and that it would be a meta medium consisting of all the mediums, sound, vision, photography, film, all that stuff that they already had. That's how he predicted the internet. Now, if each new medium subsumes a medium that comes before it, we would assume that AI is subsuming the internet. And in many, many ways, it kind of is doing that. I mean, you can see it already impacting the internet every time you do a search. But is that a complete subsuming in the same way as, say, voice was subsumed into the text from the printing press, subsumed into radio? I don't think it is. And this is why I think that AI is ontologically a different situation. It's not different via degree of technology or sophistication. It's completely different. And that is because AI is not subsuming just the medium that comes before it. It's actually subsuming us. You see, technology and the tools of technology we use to speed things up. We use to make things more efficient, make busier, more automated. But AI is actually the first tool that uses us rather than us using it. Large language models were trained from the sum total of intelligence and knowledge that the world can provide. Large language models are continuing to be trained via us and our use of this technology. Now, the number of times I've asked AI questions, say for an engineering situation, and it's provided me with the wrong answer, and then I've had to school it as to why the answer is incorrect, indicates that I am teaching this model how to think and do things more efficiently, and it will get better at it, even the free versions, and eventually, not even eventually, quite rapidly, it's going to be way more intelligent than all of us put together. But it is using us. My other concern with this situation, of course, is that if a product is being provided by people who don't want their own children exposed to it, and it's being provided for free, what is the product actually profiting from? How is it going to be a profitable venture? Because let's face it, it's going to need to make money. It's had billions and billions of dollars poured into it. Well, of course, my thoughts on this matter are that over time, the improved efficiency will not be resulting in increased employment in a lot of areas. Obviously, it's going to be a decrease of employment. And once you are hooked on the drug that is AI, then eventually a subscription model will be put in place. There's already a subscription model for the more sophisticated versions of this technology. And then once people are reliant on it, solely reliant on it, we're going to see those prices ramp up. That is obvious. So we have a situation where there is a lot of money at stake. There's a lot of investment. Walking through Rotorua on my trip to Auckland, where I went to that museum, I walked past a primary school that had an Apple logo on its wall outside, and it had a timeline. Timeline, I don't think, had the printing press in it, and wrought large at the end of the timeline was a giant AI. Now, I was unaware that schools were receiving this type of branding and a brand endorsement. And I've gone and done a little bit of research online. And obviously, as technology goes, Apple's very approachable. A lot of the time, the apps are very, very user-friendly, etc., etc. But I am troubled by a school system, a public school system, be that a private school or a public school. It's still educating people who are living in the public. Branding within a school setting, providing that type of brand loyalty, you can see why a company might think that's a great thing to do. But I am still troubled by a school system that wholeheartedly embraces a particular brand. I think it's problematic. And I don't need to have a conversation about why I think that's problematic. I think if you were just to sit down and have a good think about it, maybe ask AI why it's a problem, you'll get some really great reasons why schools shouldn't be accepting endorsements from private companies. Now, if you look at any studies, and obviously they're going to be not far-reaching studies because this is early days in this technology. So it's very, very hard to get a proper view of the impacts of this technology because it hasn't had an impact yet. But early studies suggest, studies that are not sponsored by Apple or big corporations that are actually investing in this technology, early studies indicate that children need a schema, a pattern in their head, a way of thinking, crystallized knowledge, stuff that in the olden days you'd call rote learning, stuff in their head. As this technology is rolled out, I am finding as an educator that I'm seeing less and less ability to actually be able to do that. And the worry that's being indicated via initial research is that without schemas and the formation of schemas, the use of AI is going to be a very, very difficult path to tread because you need to be able to coach AI and ask the right questions. And without a schema, that's going to become more and more difficult to do. So that's the main concern with this type of technology. In a nutshell, it is using us rather than us using it. And it is perhaps robbing students of the ability to ask the questions that will be required of this type of technology. So the argument for this technology being implemented in a school setting is that it's out there and we're going to need to get used to it and find useful ways to benefit the students. We kind of don't know what that looks like yet, but that's one of the things that we need to do. I know that the Socratic model, where it's working at the back end, where you can ask it questions like you would ask a teacher, seems to be a very, very wonderful thing. I would say that perhaps there'd be caution around that as well, because teaching really is a transaction between a real human being, a teacher, and a real student. And that transaction relies on a lot of things, so psychology of the situation as well. You will find quite often as a teacher that if a student really likes you, or if the class likes you, they really want to do well, not just for themselves, but for you. Now, down the track, if you provide a situation where students don't need to concentrate in class because they know if I miss this part of the lesson, it doesn't matter because I'm just going to ask my AI tutor when I get home, that's a great thing until you do that in every one of your lessons and you get home and you can't be bothered. So that I can already see as a pitfall of that particular Socratic model, or using it at the back end, because you really need to be able to concentrate, not just in school. Imagine if you're in an employment situation and your boss is telling you something you really need to concentrate on. and is giving you a 5-minute description of what needs to happen, and you don't have the ability to concentrate for that 5 minutes because your sense ratios are so addled by the technology that you are subjected to in an educational setting. Just think about that for a moment. That could be an outcome of this situation, and I'm sure that people will say that that's not actually happening. My observations presently, up until now, as laptops have been rolled out and technology has been rolled out, is that I am noticing a lot less ability to focus, especially on the initial parts of a lesson where things really need to be laid down. And I'm finding that at the end of a 5 or 10 minute discussion at the beginning of the class, I'll have 15 or 20 students who still have no idea what they're doing. And that might be an indication of how crap a teacher I am. Or it might be an indication that technology is a problem. But I am hearing the same thing from a lot of my compatriots in this profession. Sorry if this has been a little bit of a rant. I do not want to sound negative about the implementation of this technology. I think we just need to be very, very conservative in our approach and maintain a first do no harm attitude to this technology, because once it's had an impact on young minds, it's going to be very, very hard to fix that situation up. I guess it remains to be seen which approach will produce the best results. You could be very conservative and implement a first do no harm approach and have other students who are using this technology jump ahead of you, or the opposite could happen. I'm just thinking that we really need to be very, very careful about any way that we implement this technology or encourage its use. And I do not have answers to this specific situation. I don't think anybody does. I'm hoping it all works out well, but it remains to be seen just how impactful this technology will be, and whether it's going to be, on the whole, a very positive thing for society, a negative thing, or a bit of both. Thank you for sticking around right to the end of the video, and I shall see you in the next less rambling episode of The Art of Engineering. Oh, and by the way, the intro to this show was AI generated. The thumbnail, it was AI generated, except the picture of the chicken's head on the thumbnail. That was an oil painting done by me. I'll leave it up to you to decide which one was better.